Good morning. This is Wandering Through the Big Book, session number 39. It's going to be on step 5, and we're going to read the pages in the book and talk about that. Next week, we're going to do exact nature of our wrongs. And the week after that, we'll do some general things about sponsorship. So as always, we're going to start with our opening words. Welcome to this session of Wandering Through the Big Book. This is not a meeting of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. There is no group conscience, no seventh tradition, no requirement for membership. Everyone is welcome. Our primary purpose is taking an in-depth look at the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, in order to deepen and strengthen our own recovery, to try to help others to do the same, and to try to become trusted servants of our fellowship. We are seeking conscious contact by trusting God, cleaning house, and helping others. We're trying to improve that conscious contact by practicing steps 10, 11, and 12 every day and applying the spiritual principles we are learning to the details of our ordinary day-to-day lives. We will begin this gathering with a moment of silence to reflect on why we are here. And now some readings from our adapted from the Big Book. Christina, number 1.
Number 1, I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through and through. Perhaps you came to scoff, you will remain to pray. Page 0, right before page 1.
And Robin, number 2.
No attitude of holier than thou, no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective, page 18. And be quick to see where religious people are right, page 87.
And Steve, number 3.
If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe you have but 2 alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter and blotting out your consciousness, how miserable you really are, page 25. And the other, to ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love, page 83.
Thank you. And Jennifer, number 4.
Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will for us into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. This is the proper use of the will, page 85.
And Michelle, number 5.
Yes, and my chat is blank, so if someone else can read 5, that would be great.
Okay, I'll read it. So number 5, just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and do as I think God would have me do, will I be enabled to experience spiritual serenity right in the midst of the human calamity, page 68. Head in the clouds and feet firmly on the ground, page 130. Okay, thanks everybody. It's gonna mute everybody. And here we go. So this is on our first session on step 5, and we're going to have at least 2 more. Next week will be the exact nature of our wrongs. Talk more about that later, and then the week after that, which will actually be 2 weeks after that, I'm going to be away Sunday 2 weeks from now. Will be about sponsorship, and we'll be using that study guide more and more as we go through this stuff. Some of the materials that are in the study guide that are related to the book, but they're not in the book. So I'm hoping as we go along, you can have a printed copy of the study guide to take a look at. All right, so today what I'm going to do is read through these pages about step 5, and oftentimes in these workshops, I've tried to get the group to read and to read a sentence at a time, but it winds up being more complicated. But I'm saying that to emphasize that that if you do get the opportunity to read the book with somebody you're trying to help, it's just an amazing technique when you each read a sentence, and because it keeps you more involved. If a person reads a whole paragraph, the mind, your mind wanders off while they're reading, and vice versa. But when you alternate sentences, it keeps you right in it. Plus, you can stop anytime and talk about a definition or talk about a question you may have about what you're reading. So I'm not doing it that way, but we are looking at the actual pages of the book. Chapter 6, into action. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? And then I totally love this next sentence. And any time when you get stuck in the steps, it's just a great sentence to read to remind yourself of what we're doing. We have been trying to get a new attitude. Turn that into a question. Am I trying to get a new attitude? When people get honest, sometimes I don't know. We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator. Well, this one's key. I mean, it brings up all kinds of stuff. Do I consider myself a created being? Am I trying to get a new relationship with my Creator? I mean, technically, that's what step 3 is about. It's one of the aspects of it. I'm deciding that I want to go for this thing, that I want to try to overcome my agnosticism. I know we've talked before about one of the many things I got from my sponsor was substitute words. Every time the book talks about drinking, substitute thinking. You hear people say all the time, I came for the drinking, I stayed for the thinking. And he would say, when you see the word alcoholic, substitute the word agnostic, because ultimately what we're trying to do is turn away from our self-will run riot that we don't think so. We don't even think we're self-will run riot, and changing our whole attitude about on what basis we're gonna live our lives. And that reading that Jennifer, number 4, every day, does this sound like a suggested, it's a suggested program, but it's got a lot of musts in it and a lot of requirements. And this says every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will for us into everything that we do. And we do that by asking this question, thy will, not mine, be done. How can I best serve thee? I mean, it's so radical from the way we all live our lives. These are the thought, this question, how can I best serve thee, must go with me constantly. Can I do it? Of course not. I'm a busy boy. I got a lot going on up here. Can I hang with the question, how can I best serve thee? Nuh-uh. But I am learning, and especially when trouble shows up, that just by turning my mind to that question, I get a better outcome than when I enter into retaliation or argument, which is my habit pattern to do. And a constant reminder that with resentment, we avoid retaliation or argument because they're not helpful. We pray for a kindly and tolerant view. Fear, we avoid apologizing for God. Instead, we let God demonstrate through us what God can do. Remorse, we avoid judgment. We avoid judging other people's behavior. And instead, we ask God to mold our ideals and help us live up to them. It's the heart of the whole thing. We talked about it last week. Any rate, okay. Trying to get a new attitude. We're going to get this new attitude through this new relationship with our Creator. And the tedious, uncomfortable work of steps 4 through 9 is how we discover the obstacles in our path. And it's going to go right on from there to say these obstacles that are in our path to a relationship with our Creator are going to be cast out. You know, they're not going to be fixed. They're going to be cast out. We've admitted certain defects, ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is, put our finger on the weak items of our personal inventory. Now these are about to be cast out. There are way too many people in AA, in my opinion, that have a wonderful experience in step 5. They feel relieved of all kinds of inner burdens, inner thoughts about their lives that, I should say me, that trouble me. And we get comfortable enough that we stop. And what this is going to say is, you know, if you really want serenity, if you really want sanity and serenity, there's more to it than 4 and 5. And this requires action on our part, which when completed will mean that we've admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. I just hate it when they, the exact nature of our defects. You know, I'm a detail-oriented guy, a technical, and a perfectionist, and I don't like the idea of a defect, and I sure don't like the need to be precise. So this question haunts me, and it's what we'll talk about next week. And I invite you to think about it. What's the exact nature? You know, how have I gone off? They're telling me I've gone off the rails. You know, what? How did that happen? How did I go off the rails? Anyway, this brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. This is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we've done well enough. You know, step 1 is an admission. It's an admission of life ain't going the way I planned. My plan is not happening. This is saying that's not enough. It's going to take more than that. We think we've done well enough admitting these things to ourselves. There's doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Well, why is that? You know, and why that is, we learned in step 5, because when we dump this stuff out, our resentment and our fear and our sense of remorse around our selfishness, when we dump that stuff out, another human being that's got a whole different, well, maybe has a whole different programming going on up here, they can see stuff we can't and ask questions that we can't ask ourselves. And I remind you that this book is written with no sponsorship in mind. Sponsorship didn't even exist when the book is written. And I have yet to meet anybody or hear a story of somebody who came to a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps without a sponsor. I just haven't heard it yet. Maybe Chuck Chamberlain, because he didn't have a formal sponsor. He considered everybody his sponsor. But that was back in the 40s and 50s, and sponsorship was just developing. But any rate, and then they're going to do what Joe and Charlie point out about the whole book is the book is going to, the first part of a step is they're going to tell you why you need to do this step, and then they're going to tell you precisely how to do it. And then they're going to tell you the promises that you will experience if you follow the directions and do the step the way they've talked about it. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We'll be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do this. So here are the reasons why we should do it. Let's see, best reason first. If we don't do this, we may not overcome drinking. Now, if you do what my sponsor said, you could say, we may not overcome agnosticism. You know, I mean, it's hard to do that substitution when a person is living in their agnosticism and don't really have experience with something other than agnosticism. But what they're saying, this is part of the process to get rid of these obstacles that are in between you and a spiritual experience, an experience of a power greater than your mind and greater than your body. So time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives, trying to avoid this humbling experience. They have turned to easier methods. Well, I know we talked last week about how many of us need to pray for the willingness to get uncomfortable. This process, 4 through 9, is very uncomfortable for most of us. And really, at least for me, I was determined because I didn't want to go back, but I did not understand. I had no experience. I had no conscious experience with God. And I was so caught up in my own self-justification that the idea of amends was unthinkable. And it wasn't until I got the freedom that you get from amends, freedom from the bondage of self, that I started to get excited. And I don't know, that's the way it is. Trying to avoid this humbling experience. The whole thing is humbling, you know, right from step 1. Admitting that I'm powerless over anything. We turn to easier methods. That's the way. That's the human way. You know, I keep saying my body, its primary purpose is to stay alive, and my mind's primary purpose is to be comfortable. And the number one thing that's in the way of it feeling comfortable is fear. And I had to drink to try to manage my fear. And it's only been through the grace and power of this program that I experience fear so much less today than I did before, and that continues. I get less annoyed by the world out there and more solid in my relationship. But it takes my second character defect is arrogance. And it's just been so hard to overcome my need to believe my own thinking. You know, because that's my definition of arrogance. I actually believe my mind is delivering me the truth. And then you get this humbling experience when your sponsor points out to you, Joe and Charlie say this again, you can't drink on truth. An alcoholic cannot drink on truth. The truth is, I've got no business drinking. But the truth is, my mind needs to drink. I'm drinking on a lie. You know, my medallion says, to thine own self be true. And that's caused me a lot of confusion. Which self are we talking about? And I think what it means is true to my spiritual self, not true to my human self. The truth of my human self is I've got an allergy, an abnormal reaction to alcohol. I cannot drink safely, period. That doesn't mean I don't need relief, because I do. And that's why we turn to easier. We want relief. We are unwilling to be uncomfortable, unwilling to see this discomfort as the way out. That's the hard part. Doesn't make human sense. I got to get uncomfortable before I'm going to get comfortable. We had a member around here, around this area, used to say, Alcoholics Anonymous will do for me slowly what alcohol did quickly. And I know it's a while, it takes a while before you change that. You know, my mind put a big equal sign between alcohol equals relief to anything. And if this guy is right, and that's my experience, he's right, it's Alcoholics Anonymous equals relief. I just got to keep at it. I better speed this up, huh? Let's see. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. And then they're saying the same kind of thing, that our tendency when we get comfortable is to stop. We think the reason is they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock, only thought they'd lost their egoism and fear, only thought they'd humbled themselves. But they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. You know, humility, fearlessness, and honesty, those are synonyms for serenity. You know, if I can be honest, accepting of my life as it's shown up, and the other people in my life as they've shown up, be fearless about my future. In fact, to the other way, I want to be, you know, Amy introduces herself as an enthusiastic alcoholic. Well, that's what I want. You know, I want to be enthused about my life instead of dreading. I used to wake up with deep dread. You know, what's going to get screwed up today? Who's going to betray me or disappoint me today? Who's going to put my perfectionism right up in my face today? But they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty, and sense that we find until they told someone else all their life story. Well, you know, people can use this to misinterpret what we're doing an inventory on. But the reverse of this is that until they don't withhold any of their secrets from another. You know, that's the other way. It's not that I got to tell everybody all of the wonderful things about my life, all my life story, as much as I can't hold anything back when I do this. Okay, then this thing, more than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He's very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character, the one he likes his fellows to see, wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. And, you know, this takes you right to, where is it? Right to page 25. No, not 25, 60, I think it is. Yeah, that thing about each person is like the actor who wants to run the whole show, is forever trying to arrange the lights, the ballet, the scenery, and the rest of the players in his own way. You know, if the rest of the world would be different, I could experience serenity. That's the lie that we tell ourselves. At any rate, I also want to say so we inventory resentment and fear and remorse. And remorse, if remorse stays in self-pity and we rest in our victimhood, we're not gonna come to a spiritual awakening. We'll stay stuck in that internal negativity. And I'm trying not to say but, and I believe that remorse is a form of conscious contact. It's of my true self, my spiritual self is trying to get through to my human brain and say, this is not a good idea. Or I experience remorse about the way I've been because I know it doesn't line up with spiritual principle. I know something's not right. And an example would be when we read before back in more about alcoholism, Jim the car salesman, suddenly the thought crosses his mind that if he drinks whiskey in milk on a full stomach, he's not going to experience the phenomenon of craving, and he's not going to wind up back in the asylum. And he says, right after that, I vaguely sensed I wasn't being any too smart. That, I'm suggesting, is conscious contact. He's actually experiencing his spiritual self saying, not a good idea, Jimbo, not a good idea. And we can use this sense of remorse. And again, I say, as long as it doesn't wallow in self-pity and becomes an excuse for not making the effort, we can use our sense of remorse to motivate amends. Because the essential part of, at least for me, I got to be careful there. For me, I had several amends that I didn't want to make because, I'd hear a speaker say, they didn't deserve that. They didn't deserve the way I treated them. Well, my arrogant mind said, yes, they did. Yes, they did deserve that treatment. I'm trying to make the world a better place, and I'm doing it by, expressing my anger or displeasure with somebody. But then when my sponsor helped me see that I wouldn't want to be treated that way, if somebody treated me the way I treated them, I'd be livid. I'd light me right up. And then all of a sudden, I understood that if I want to get away from that, I'm going to have to go to that person and say, I wouldn't want to be treated the way I treated you. And this is what I'm doing about it. And, we'll get to it later, but the second part of that is, are there ways I've hurt you that I'm not even aware of or haven't brought up? And are there things I can do about it that will right the wrong? I don't mean to get off on that, but if you can sense that you're living a double life and you want it to thine own self be true, these steps 4 through 9 give you a way to do that, and they make a promise. At the end, the 9th step promises that when you're halfway through the amends process, you're going to experience all this stuff. And again, I love Joe and Charlie, they read those promises and they put before each one of them. When I was drinking and alcohol was working for me, I experienced a new happiness and, everything that the promise, I knew how to, whatever, all the promises of the 9th step that I'm blanking on, but, and it's true. What I wanted from alcohol, I want from God. And part of this is learning that because I can't drink safely, I got to go to God instead of going to alcohol. Carl Jung himself, we'll read it in one of these steps, said to Bill Wilson that he believed when an alcoholic drinks, they are seeking union with God. Carl Jung said that. A while after, he said to Roland Hazard, no, I've never seen an alcoholic with a mind like yours recover. You're going to need more than psychotherapy, big boy. Okay, so I'm in the middle of page 73. The inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. But look at this. I'm telling you, this is conscious contact. Coming to his senses, he is, oops, I lost it. He is revolted at certain episodes he vaguely remembers. I mean, I'm trying to make the case that this is a good thing. This seems like a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. If you can find a way, if you believe you can find a way out of it. These memories are a nightmare. I've always loved that, it's Bill's story, but it's Dr. Bob's nightmare. I love that they titled it that way. It could have been Bill's nightmare and Dr. Bob's story, but I love that nightmare. That's what happens. He trembles to think somebody might have observed him as fast as he can. This is what we do. He pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they will never see the light of day. He is under constant fear and tension, and that makes for more drinking. You want to know why we need to do this stuff? It's right there. If we don't, we're going to drink again. And with us, to drink is to die. Psychologists are inclined to agree with us. We've spent thousands of dollars. Can you imagine Roland Hazard spending thousands of dollars with Carl Jung? Only to have Carl Jung say, this has all been for nothing. I've never succeeded with an alcoholic like you, with a mind like yours. Let's see. We know but few instances where we've given these people a fair break at, instantly. Just think back to if you ever had a conversation with a health professional about your drinking, whether you told the truth. How much do you drink? Oh, 2 or 3 a day. Lie. Let's see. We've seldom told the whole, nor have we followed their advice. Unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we were honest with no one else. Small wonder many in the medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics and their chance for recovery. You remember that guy? I can't remember who he is, and I can't even remember where it is, but he said, I know 2 of you have recovered, but I swear if you'd presented yourself to my hospital, I would have done anything I could to refuse you. And then he says, people like you are too heartbreaking. Can you imagine? I'm hearing a lot of stories right now about people. It tends to be men reconciling with their mothers, and just these amazing stories of how the dynamic in the relationship shifted when I heard this Friday night when a young man made amends with his mother after making amends with his brother. It was dynamite. He said something else that I haven't been able to shake. He's shaken and bacon in his very first day of sobriety, and he falls in with these people. He's at a recovery spa, Canyon Ranch in Western Massachusetts, and he falls in with these guys who are headed for the Bill Wilson House for a men's retreat. And so this is the next morning. I mean, he arrives there at 5 o'clock. He goes to this meeting. The next morning, they're headed for, at any rate, and he's balking big time. And this other woman who was at the meeting the evening, well, at any rate, she says to him something to the effect of, you may not be in a position to appreciate the opportunity you are being given. These are good people. They can help you. My advice is go with them. First day of sobriety, knows nothing. He doesn't know East Dorset, Vermont, you know, and he goes. But the point is, I want to say this to myself every day. I may not be in a position to appreciate the opportunity that Alcoholics Anonymous is giving me to have this relationship, to change my attitude and have this relationship and discover the obstacles that are in my way. You know, I am one of those people that is so grateful that that I can't drink safely. Because I think if I could drink safely, I would have gone to my deathbed and never experienced some of the stuff I'm getting to experience. And I just think about what this young man said. You may not be in a position to appreciate the opportunity in front of you. Okay, where the heck are we? Oh, that makes for more. Oh, then these doctors, and small wonder you have a low opinion. Okay, we must be entirely on. I'm at the bottom of 73 with somebody. Oh, if we expect to live long or happily in this world, rightly and naturally, we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to make this intimate and confidential step. So remember, you know, there aren't sponsors around. And this is one of the few clues we get as to what to look for and how to be if you're on the other side of the table. Because they keep emphasizing, let's see, those of us belonging to a religious denomination which requires confession, there's only one I know of, must, and of course will, want to go to the properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. Though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk with someone ordained by an established religion. We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. What is our problem? Our problem is that we are extreme examples of self-will run riot, but we don't think so. Our problem is that we are agnostic, which means we have doubt about the reality of God. And so we are incapable of going to God and saying, can you please guide me? It really, it's deeper than that. You remember that 8-word prayer: empty me, heal me, guide me, use me. You know, we can't go asking for guidance until we've been emptied and we've been healed. I mean, it's great to seek God's guidance, but frankly, it can't get in there amidst the weeds and the flat, whatever it is that's going on up in here. All the remorse and fear and resentment. Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics. Ain't that the truth? If you have not experienced the phenomenon of craving, if you can take or leave alcohol, how could you possibly understand the struggle that alcoholics go through? If we cannot or rather would rather not do this, we search our acquaintance. Here it is. A closed-mouthed, understanding friend. If you get the honor and privilege of trying to help another through these steps, job one is that you can keep a confidence and that you can maintain some level of trust between you and the other person. Job one. Perhaps our doctor or psychologist would be the person. Maybe one of your family cannot disclose anything to family which would hurt them or make them unhappy. No right to save our own skin at another person's expense. Such parts of our story we tell to someone who will understand, yet be unaffected. That's a key thing. You know, somebody who can hear your information and not have it trouble them. The rule is hard on ourselves, always, always considerate of others. Notwithstanding great necessity for discussing ourselves with someone, maybe one is so situated, no suitable person available. If that's so, the step may be postponed only, however, if we hold ourselves in complete readiness to go through with it at the first opportunity. We say this because we are very anxious that we talk to the right person. It is important that he be able to keep a confidence, that he fully understand and approve what we are driving at, and that he will not try to change our plan. You know, that's the problem. If you get this in amends a lot. The amen D, if I got that right, if I'm the amen door, you know, they start, oh, wasn't so bad, wasn't so bad. I remember hearing a story of a man making amends to his father, and his father goes, oh, that didn't bother me. Oh, that didn't bother me. And then he brings up one more thing, and Dad goes, that bothered me. You know, I love that because that's the way it goes. That bothered me. But we don't want them trying to change our plan. Okay, now here's establishing the conditions. This is establishing the conditions under which a fifth step can be effective. When we decide who is to hear our story, we waste no time. We have a written inventory, and we're prepared for a long talk. We explain to our partner what we're about to do and why we have to do it. I mean, if you're on the sponsor side of the deal, you know, you should ask, why are you doing this? What do you think is going to happen here? The other person should realize we are engaged upon a life and death errand. Why? Because if we drink again, we die. Most people approached in this way will be glad to help. They will be honored by our confidence. Okay, you hear a lot in AA. You got to give it away to keep it, right? Well, that's true enough. But my experience is you got to give it away to really get it. I do not really understand what happened to me with my sponsor. I did not really understand how to handle resentment, how to handle fear, how to handle remorse. I did not understand this relationship with tons of things I did not understand until trying to help another through these steps. It's for me without question. I mean, I've got spiritual literature on one side and my relationship with higher power, but it's in trying to bring, that's why I love doing this. You know, I haven't read these pages this carefully in a while. But I want to do a good job. So, you know, but that's what happens. I learn by dealing with this stuff. Running out of time here. The fifth step, promises. So I think that at the heart of sponsorship is keeping the other person in the game until they become conscious of God's presence in their lives. And so motivation to keep somebody going is important. And the promises are a wonderful way. There are promises attached to every step. And they're a wonderful way to say, how would you feel about being delighted? Instead of, you know, how would you feel about looking the world in the eye? How would you feel if you didn't feel fear as much as you're feeling it today? How would you like to feel the nearness of your creator? You know, how would you like to have a spiritual experience instead of faith? You know, faith is great, but what we're after is not belief. It's not an intellectual, we don't find our way to God with our minds. How would you like to feel that the drink problem has disappeared? that your obsession with relief through alcohol has been removed. How would you like to feel to walk on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe? You know, that amazing line at the end of We Agnostics, for the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his creator. How would you like to feel that as a motivation to get in extreme discomfort, which is what these steps do? I have yet to meet anybody who went into amends feeling comfortable. You come out of amends feeling comfortable, but you don't go into them feeling comfortable. Returning home, we find, this is step 5.5, some people call it. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we've done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart. What? That we know him better. Not the sponsor, not ourselves, not AA, not the steps, but we know God better. Taking this book down from our shelf, turn to the page which contains the 12 steps. Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we have omitted anything. How are we feeling about our work so far? I didn't really feel this till I was in amends. And that's when I just suddenly realized, when I realized that literally spiritual power had done for me what I couldn't do with my human power. And then they talk about this arch and mortar without sand, and it's just reviewing our work and seeing if there's anything else we want to talk about before we move on. It's just such a awesome thing. I want to just read one thing before we open up for discussion, shut off the camera and stuff. No, that's not it. Yeah. So page 25 is becoming a beautiful, beautiful page for me, and it has three paragraphs, and it starts with, there is a solution, but you're not going to like it. There is a solution, but you're going to get real uncomfortable. And then it describes a spiritual awakening in the middle. And then at the end it says, and by the way, if you're a real alcoholic, 2 choices. It's all you got. There is no middle of the road solution. You know, it's either do this stuff, seek a relationship with God, or go on to the bitter end. You know, we read it at the beginning, trying to blot out of your consciousness how miserable you really are, you know. But I want to read the middle paragraph, and I'm going to read it with an I statement because that's become important for me to do. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that I have had a deep and effective spiritual experience that's going on. It ain't like, I don't see any end to it, which has revolutionized my whole attitude toward my own life and your life, towards our fellows and toward this universe. The central fact of my life today is the absolute certainty. I love that, because self-doubt has plagued me my entire life. So saying something like absolute certainty is, anyway, let's see. The central fact of my life today is the absolute certainty that my Creator has entered into my heart and life in a way which is indeed miraculous. Miraculous. So, all right, we're a little behind schedule. I'm going to gong this gong, and Buck's going to shut off the recording, and we'll have some open discussion, and I'll look forward to seeing you next week to talk about the exact nature of my wrongs. Thank you. Thanks for being here.